Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect and the final session of the week. Thank you all to everyone who's joining us now and has joined some or all of the sessions over the last 3 days. It's been a lot of fun for me, and perhaps the best is yet to come with Vertical Leap, growing the free vertical drama business, which is the first Vert session I believe we've ever done. So excited to sit back and learn when all this gets rolling. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes, as you may have guessed. The first person to correctly name the track and the artist and the dulcet flute sound you just heard will win a $50 Amazon gift card at the end of the session, but you must be present to win, so stick around because there's a lot to come in the meantime. The chat is open, so chat in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many questions from the audience as we can at the end of the session, so put your questions in the Q&A. Sessions from all 3 days of Streaming Media Connect are already appearing on the Streaming Media YouTube channel. The link for the playlist for that is in the chat. And we will be right back here May 12th to 14th for the next Streaming Media Connect. The call for speakers is open. Link is in the chat, and we want to hear from you. So if you've got something to say, you've got an area of expertise, you've got expertise to share, or a session you want to do, let us know. And we're going to start planning that next week. And I think that's everything from me. So I would like to welcome to the stage once again the man who always closes the show at Streaming Media Connect, Chris Pfaff.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for being here as we wrap up another fantastic Streaming Media Connect. And I just want to remind people that Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant. And it's interesting because, of course, I'm not going to give away the name of the title of the song, but I'm just going to say that television has been around for a century now. One of the first transmission was Bell Labs in 1926. And, of course, that was horizontal, but we're going vertical. This is the Vertical Leap, and it has exploded in the last few years. We have an amazing panel. I'm going to welcome them now. First and foremost, all the way from L.A., Grace Gao with Celestine Pictures. Welcome, Grace.
Hi, everybody.
Hello there.
How
Also from L.A. is Brandan Dennehy, and he's with Stratagem Vertical, and just back from MIP London. Hello, Brandan.
Hey, everybody.
And L.A. again is Carina Williamson with GoodShort. Hello, Carina.
Hey, guys.
And last but not least, my longtime colleague, friend here in New York, Thom Woodley with Hudson Vertical. Hey, Thom.
Hey, everyone.
So I want to start by talking about where we are in this very exciting and very explosive area of vertical microdramas. How can a seasoned executive in microdrama leverage their past experience from traditional film TV to increase both artistic and commercial value of this medium? You've all done various things. Of course, I've known Grace as Grace and Thom are fellow members of the Producers Guild of America with me, and I've known Thom since his days with early online video. Thom, we'll start with you. How do you think you've moved into this, and what things are really relevant for you, because you've touched many different parts of the streaming world in terms of original content?
Yeah, I mean, I've been interested in mobile storytelling, I think pretty much since it came out. I think I first got involved in that. I mean, I was involved in as you mentioned, the very early web series world, even before the iPhone existed. But I think starting in about 2011, around there, I started working with the company who made Episode Interactive, which was one of the very first, if not the first, I'm not sure, choose your own adventure sort of storytelling platforms deliberately made for mobile. And it wasn't video, but it was kind of a merging of storytelling and casual gaming. And ever since then, I've sort of been lightly interested. And, you know, for me, it was never a question that the stories would be compact. And I mean, I'm sure Quibi will come up a couple times, but that was the number one thing that when that happened, I was like, these aren't short enough. I knew that sort of instinctively. And for me, I was kind of waiting for the tide to turn. I jumped in with both feet probably around 2020. I became the head of content for now, well, it was not defunct, but it's changed its focus, an app called Rizzle out of India that was trying to produce vertical series to sort of compete with TikTok. It was a little early for that, but became through that experience, became aware of the boom in the Asia marketplace. And a couple years later was reached out by some people in Asia, as I had a background of producing essentially decent enough looking stuff for very little money, which was one of the very early qualifications that you needed to get into this space. Um, and yeah, now I think I'm excited to talk about all levels of it, but I think we are starting to see uh, the aperture widen. So we're not only talking about micro budget production, although we still sort of are, and we're sort of right now at the precipice, early 2026, of this really, I hate to throw around jargony words like tipping point and so forth, of this really becoming a big new mass media in a way that we haven't seen in a while, and excited to be, all of us, I'm sure, are excited to be kind of able to play at the forefront of that, and have another shot here at writing the rules of a medium rather than have a gatekeeper tell us where they are. So that's kind of how I and why I got involved.
Yeah, and again, I'll come back to you again because, of course, you have enormous experience in the ad world and commercials. So I'm just curious how that works out. Grace, you've come at this. I want to hear your journey into this, but of course, you're also launching something that I think we need to hear about. So give us your sort of take and your background coming into vertical.
Yeah, of course. So recently we've soft launched our microdrama studio named Celestine Pictures, and we are focusing on IP screenwriting as our core moat, but also utilizing AI in the pipeline native and also acquiring and distributing internationally at the same time. And where it all came from really was I've been a bilingual person my whole life, and I started out my film and TV career out in New York, the very independent filmmaking scene, out into traveling with co-production crew around the world, from Australia to Asia, back to the States. And then after coming out of grad school with a screenwriting degree, straight into the strike. There's the only gig in town that is the verticals. Naturally fell into this landscape and started learning about this new medium early. Because of that, learning from the best platforms out there, best collaborators early in the game, and now able to see where we fit best in this entire landscape, and decided to, establish our own thing, really honing on human creativity, as we're evolving further into automation, trying to cut the cost down across the board. Yeah.
Tremendous. And Brandan, tell us about your journey and obviously certainly in Hollywood, but now moving into vertical in a very big way. Stratagem Vertical is uniquely positioned for this.
Yeah, I sort of backed my way into this space completely by happenstance, really, even before microdramas were a thing. I spent 20 years in Hollywood working with, folks like David Ellison, Kevin Feige, Michael Mann, like high levels of Hollywood. And even then, it was impossible to get anything made. The pandemic came along and killed everything that I had set up. And completely serendipitously, a company reached out to me, pitched themselves as the Netflix of audio. And I said, sure, let's do it. And what I learned immediately was this company's business model was quite different than anything else that was going on. And
that was, of course, Pocket FM.
That was Pocket FM, yes. And so we were licensing content from China. We were localizing it. We were testing it. And then when we were getting validation through testing, we would make those shows for the US audience. And that model, that was in late 2021. And that model is what led to the explosion of microdramas about a year and a few months later when Real Short came out. And so we moved into that space in our own way at Pocket FM, mostly for marketing purposes, but also putting shows in app. And so, unbeknownst to me, we were building the second, maybe GoodShort was the second, and we were the third. We were kind of spinning up around the same time, microdrama team in the United States. And so I kind of we didn't call it microdrama at that point. We just called it live action because we didn't know to call it microdrama because nobody knew to call it microdrama. And so that's how I got into the space. Since then, I've worked with several platforms on an advisory capacity in terms of understanding the content landscape, the audience landscape, all of those things, precisely because, like GoodShort, almost all the players in this space are overseas recently. And so there's a lot of white space that they're all trying to figure out how to take advantage of while still going 100 miles an hour with the thing that they're doing very, very well right now, which is bringing in essentially soap operas and making Chinese soap operas work, not just for the US, but for literally the rest of the world. They're in Latin America, Southeast Asia, everywhere.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how that's really attracted an audience that was probably looking for this anyway. I mean, given the overwhelming audience and really the power of TikTok and anyone who's built something for that vertical, which is fascinating. And Carina, you've been at GoodShort now for a little while, and you come straight. Speaking of careers, you literally come straight out of university into. So you are original OG in the U.S. vertical drama space. And I'm just interested to see, first of all, what your take was. I mean you are certainly as native to all of this as anyone. I don't know out there in the audience, but what was your take? What got you interested in this, and what are the things that you've seen in the relatively short time that you've been there?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, we're seeing kind of a new generation similar to me who are, coming to Hollywood out of school or moving to try and make a career in entertainment. And they're all turning to verticals instead because one, there are just so many of them that, there's an endless amount of options. And also because there is a severe lack of options in the traditional Hollywood space. For me personally, it was pretty similar. I, along with Grace, graduated into the strikes in 2023 and pretty randomly came across this job posting and got the job. It ended up being a great fit for me because I studied at USC cinema studies and Chinese. So I think it was a little bit of like a needle in a haystack that we found each other and happened to be a perfect fit. So I joined GoodShort in August 2023. So I've been here for just around 2.5 years. And that was, I think when I joined, we had released maybe 4 shows total. So it very much was right at the very beginning. And I think what really drew me to stay here was one, the people, like our employees are incredible and the teams that we build are really amazing. And also to have the opportunity to, see projects through from script to production to editing to release in such a short amount of time and be able to understand the data and our audience in such short time frames and make such quick decisions and test things out and get to understand what people are looking for out of this new form of media. And so that has been very fun, and I'm very lucky to have been in this space for so long already. And yeah, really look forward to seeing. I think this year is going to be very, very big.
Yeah, we're barely 2 months in, and I can see where this goes. It's going to be interesting to see. Just sort of, we'll talk a little bit more about this, where vertical, hits things like big tentpole events, the new fronts, the up fronts, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to talk about, really look at where there's been a transition, because there's been this sort of tag of microdrama content being sort of soapy, lowbrow, but at the same time, they're prestige, high concept microdramas that are receiving great viewership data and reviews, especially with the use and support of AIGC. So the question is, will the use of AI be there to solve overhead issues, keep it low for production? Is it going to replace good momentum for live action labor employment? And I think I want to start with you, Carina, because one of the things I find very interesting is that you automatically have an ecosystem that knows everything about the viewer, which is called the
Mhm.
mobile phone. But also you've got platforms that have built tremendous amounts of AI. And I'm curious, with other tools that the likes of GoodShort or other production companies would
Mhm.
use, where do you see that going? And to get to Thom's point about a tipping point, I feel like we're kind of there before we got on the call. Just for the audience sake, we were talking about things like comfy AI and where the whole ecosystem is going in AI filmmaking. Do you find that AI is starting to reveal itself to be more of a friend for what you're doing in the vertical?
Yeah. So to be honest, actually, we had been using some AI tools as far back as 2024. And actually, I was someone who in our company was using them primarily for like voice generation. If we were, one example was like we had a hockey show. And they didn't end up writing any like announcer lines, but they really wanted to have like an announcer, like, taking us play by play through a montage of the game. And so I used 11 Labs, which is a big name now, especially for voice generation. But I tried a bunch of models, and that was the best one in 2024, at least, and used that to generate, announcer lines. But in general, the way that at least a company as large as GoodShort is thinking about it is primarily like, you know, an addition to our slate. We have certain KPIs and like quantity percentages that we need to meet through the year. And at the same time, we do want to spend more money, more time, more effort on new genres, new ventures, new ideas. And so I think more so than like, supplementation, we see it as an additive that we can put more and more new things on our app that can generate income for us that then we can use in order to elevate the space even further.
Yeah, interesting. It'll be interesting to see. And Grace, you're nodding your head, so I'm curious where you see the AI sort of plot expanding here for what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm nodding along because of the interest that had came along ever since our launch online and receiving top ranking microdrama platforms interest in inquiring, hey, can we collaborate in some ways as of expanding the AI vendor roster for the platform to commission more on their slate into this direction. But it seemed to be still very much of a still testing and verifying data stage across the board, even in defining the scope or how much you want to spend per show on these AIGC microdrama. And where I see there might be just becoming a separate category different from the live action completely kind of material that they're producing. So there might become a ratio, say at a platform slate, how many percent you will allocate to AIGC microdrama versus live action annually or quarterly. They're still figuring out that calibration at the moment. And where we sit outside of the platforms as independent content providers is always keeping the eye on the storytelling and knowing what genre performs better in AIGC versus in live action from the viewership data that the platform provide for us in hindsight,
And
and then
and
pivot
can you give us
accordingly.
a little inside detail there? Any?
Like on the result,
Yeah.
at the moment, it is very trial period from both domestic US platforms that we worked with and also the US early established ones at the moment. So it's hard to say or hard to say which genre should we be banking on, but more of like a conjunction of the quality of the output of the AIGC plus if that makes sense for that specific story at the same
I
time.
think,
Right. So
I
you're
think
basically
it's
go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
I was going to add to that. I think it's also important to point out that there's one major um, inflection point that needs to be crossed, and that's audience behavior. Once audiences accept, Gen AI stories, that's the point in which you'll see fundamental shift. We don't know if that will totally happen, if it'll be much more like what Grace was talking about, where there's some audiences like it and some audiences don't. So there's going to always be both. That seems like a very likely scenario. And also the fact that AI is sort of infiltrated every level of the process. I mean, we're talking about platforms who are using AI for green light decisions, and that's not new. Studios were doing that before microdramas were even a thing.
Full disclosure, Largo AI was a client of ours last year and the year before. We helped them expand in the U.S. So I've been part of that.
And so AI is going to help in a lot of ways. There's genres that are quite literally out of the budget range right now, but that every platform and every producer who wants in on this space knows that there's a huge audience for, romantasy being a big one. So it's going to come into play. One of the sort of chicken and egg scenarios right now, and Carina can probably speak to this pretty well, is that the platforms that are going full bore or going 100 miles an hour with their foot on the gas and have very little ability to sort of take their foot off the gas and start doing major changes to their production pipelines, and they're experimenting in R&D with big shifts. So it's sort of a chicken and egg scenario for the big platforms right now. All of them would love to cut their production costs by 3/4 if they could tomorrow, but it's a matter of when and how they actually go about that.
Yeah, and Thom, where do you see AI playing into both what you're doing with Hudson Vertical and also just in the industry writ large?
Yeah, well, I should say that Hudson Vertical was a company that I had founded in the fall, and then immediately kind of it ended up getting placed working directly with an app. So I don't want to speak on behalf of any particular app or anything, but what I do see is, as Brandan mentioned, obviously it is being used for testing and piloting. And look, with such a data centric corner of the industry as this is, that only makes sense. And again, as Brandan said, there will be an inflection point where I think it's like Doug Shapiro writes about this, right? About how we always kind of overestimate, we the producers overestimate the level of quality, production quality, and even story quality that people need to see. There's also this great Guardian article yesterday that compared microdramas to the content being the kind of stuff that you want to watch when you're drunk at 2 a.m. Right.
Yeah.
And so when you're drunk at 2 a.m., I'm not turning on Criterion Channel. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Criterion, but like that's not what it is. Right. And so I think when you add all those things up, the fact that the DNA of most of these apps, at least the initial run of them, was not storytelling, right? It was mobile gaming. And I mean, some of them came from interactive fiction. That's true. But mobile gaming, by and large, selling coins. What do we put in front of people that will make them buy digital tokens, right? That is the business. So from that perspective, from a bean counting perspective, it doesn't really matter to them if it's if it's live production or if it's AI. So I guarantee, yeah, like the minute that I think we're still in the audience backlash phase of AI, but the minute that we cross that hump, as much as I hate to say it, I fear that quite a lot of the attention will shift to purely AI. And yes, there are tools that help it, but I mean no cameras being used whatsoever. I will, however, offer a counterpoint, and that is when you dive into, and it's anecdotal, but when you dive into the feelings and feedback of like the super fans of the genre, they all list things like actors as their primary thing that they're into, right? And I think that is part of the fact that this is a soap opera genre primarily, and that's always driven soap operas. Like, will they say the same thing about sci-fi and things like that? Maybe not, but yeah, I think that those kind of things, that real human experience is going to be, in a strange way, I see this working for, I think Brandan said romantasy. I see it working for, more like genre things like fantasy, sci-fi, kind of tinged things, or even straight up animation a year before it really crosses the line with, human centric stories.
Yeah, and I would agree certainly with animation, but I think it certainly depends on the genre or even the micro genre. I would think that the way I see AI playing into this is really looking at where you get a mix, what you can use for your creative as much as for throwing things out to the audience. I would think that we're in such a rapid period of innovation and churn at the same time. But one of the things that's so fascinating about vertical is just the addiction, the loyalty, the grasp. Thom, I want to come back to you on this because, of course, among other things, you worked on the agency side. For those who don't know, Thom did write many of the most interesting men in the world Dos Equis ads.
Who, by the way, he came back this month.
I know
if you
Jonathan
all saw it.
Goldstein
Yeah.
came back.
He's back.
One of the great comebacks in branded content. But my question for you, though, because I think I want to get into this with respect to brand loyalty, if you will, or even brand development. Given your background in branded content, do you find that the vertical arena is ripe for that? And I could see all of you being great stewards and counselors and viziaries for brands in terms of how to do this properly in this explosive arena. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So I guess two thoughts. The first is that I want to just slightly separate from a nomenclature perspective what I would consider to be microdrama versus the larger vertical narrative world. In the same way that soap operas are different than television and cable is a subset of was a subset. So, and the reason I call that out is because I think that it is important to stress that there are the apps that we've been talking about so far are largely storytelling with this coin-based monetization system. And much like how selling TV commercials, caused the structure of the sitcom and such as we know it, selling these coin-based transactions is what's been guiding, right? Like the feel of the best practices that we have in vertical storytelling, microdrama storytelling. And I think that's important to keep in mind because for me, that's the question of how do brands play. It's not a question of whether it's the right place for brands to play from a demographic standpoint or an engagement standpoint. I mean, like, look, the apps can very easily tell you, hey, here's our audience. It's women, and depending on the different app, you'll get different ages, but either 25 to 35 or 35 and up or 45 and up. And, certainly we could all make a list of brands that really should be advertising to these people where they are or where the engagement's the strongest, right? So the other advantage to any brands is just compared to, let's say, product placement in television. You have not only a budget that is an order of magnitude lower than your television or film budget would be, but a time frame that is significantly quicker. Like you can theoretically, I'm Dos Equis, not that it would be Dos Equis, but I'm Dos Equis, and at the top of the quarter, I could say, oh, you know what? I think I'll do a microdrama, and by the end of the quarter, it's out and I have my results. And that's that's the kind of thing we did when I was at College Humor leading the branded content division, but that would be for a brand with a one-off sketch video. And now the question is really, well, why can't a brand make an entire series they can't? And they've started to, right? So Procter & Gamble made a 55 episode series with Jonas at Pixie USA recently. And, there's been a couple of other experiments in this space, Maybelline. And so the real hurdle is, and then I'll stop hogging the discussion, but the real hurdle, I think, from the brand perspective is transparency in numbers, right? The way these deals are always done is a brand needs to see the ROI, right? With television, there are methods. With YouTube, you can look right at the performance and see what it's doing. For the most part, apps are not or haven't been in the mindset to or even capable of sharing true numbers of views or impressions. And so that there are some apps that have really interesting kind of workarounds for that. But so far, most of the branded plays have been sort of at the production company level. Like, if a production company is footing the bill for all or most of the production and they want to bring in a sponsor to offset their costs, that's fine for the app. That doesn't affect them either way. But I think that the app that figures out how to pair brands with like the best lessons of the creator economy and how they do it are going to be the ones that really unlock that.
Exactly. And
It's
go ahead, Brandon. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say just it's also important to keep in mind the Thom was mentioning the business model of the platforms currently, which is evolving and going to evolve majorly this year probably, is a user acquisition business. It's not a entertainment business. It's not a content business. It's user acquisition.
Yes.
It's mobile gaming format, and so for brands to get into bed with somebody who is in that business, they need to know for a fact that that platform is going to spend on marketing, because 1 in 10, 1 in 20 shows have a great marketing asset that drives millions of people to that show, but the rest don't. And so if that brand is paying for one of those shows that doesn't have a great marketing asset, the show doesn't exist and they don't have a return. So, one of the things that's happening in this space is, brands coming in and doing slate deals with platforms, brands working with independents, which is what, Procter and Gamble was, essentially what Crocs and Maybelline were, even though I think there was some real short involvement with those. By and large, one of the big moves you'll see this year is brands getting into the space and not having anything to do with platforms. There's no inherent need for the platform unless they have a guarantee that show's going to get 5-10 million in ad spend to drive people to that show. And in reality, that's not necessary if your show is free, which is what the brands aren't looking to monetize. They want quality impressions. So if you don't need to advertise that way and acquire customers that way, the brands don't need the platform. So you're going to see both versions of that happening this year. But one thing you'll see in a big way is a lot more independent distribution. And that doesn't even apply just to brands. You'll see a lot of producers starting to release things independently as well.
Right. And Carina, at GoodShort, what have you seen on the brand side, and what sort of good practices can you relate?
Yeah, so within our company, I have pretty much been the point person for all of our brand discussions. And at this point, there are many. I'd say in a given week, I'm having meetings between 5 to 6 different companies. And my LinkedIn is always, get messages, get emails all the time from people who want to break into this space. And Brandan and Thom, I think that you have exactly hit kind of the mismatch that is happening a lot of times in these discussions. And that includes, unlike television or streaming right now, vertical companies are less likely to give full access to data. And we're also less likely to compromise on, profit returns. It's just not currently something that has been done a lot before. So we don't really have a model to work with. But I'll also point out that, like, from our perspective, we don't necessarily need brand deals, at least at our company right now. We are improving steadily and doing, really well on our own. And so a lot of times we come into these meetings with brands and, we are interested in working with them, but they also, I think, need to understand that it has to be, a good deal for both sides. Because, a lot of them come in and they say, like, oh yeah, we'll cover production costs, we'll cover some marketing spend and we'll get you some PR. But to be honest, the only one of those that we can't get right now is the PR. So what's coming out of the situations right now is what is going to give us, similar to like the user acquisition, what is going to get this in front of the most possible people, even if it's not through marketing, whatever, but purely through, trades, news. So that's the area where we are right now.
Right.
We are going to get some deals done. I think pretty soon we have a couple. But I have a lot of people coming to me, and it's been very interesting to hear everyone's different perspectives on how they can work their way into the vertical space.
Interesting.
It's also,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it's also really to point out that the brand and the content have to be a good fit. I mean, it seems obvious,
Absolutely.
but I've talked to a lot of brands that are eager to figure out how to get into the space. And quite frankly, like, their brand doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the space unless they want to do something crazy experimental that is completely new for the space. And so there is a subset of brands in which this makes tons of business sense for right now. And then there's a whole lot of other brands that either are going to have to push the envelope or wait until somebody else pushes the envelope and opens up some of that white space to other audiences that are a fit for their service, product, whatever.
Yeah, we've seen
Yep.
some of this before. I used to love Vine. For those who don't know, it was a 6-second app, and it was acquired by Twitter back in like 2016, and it kind of went to web heaven or app heaven. But it was an amazing playground and kind of sandbox and laboratory, if you will, for young creators and doing brilliant things in 6 seconds on mobile. And I feel like the vertical drama business has just been waiting there for a while. But so much of it, of course, has really come from behaviors that were created in Asia. Grace, what do you see in terms of either the transliteration or sort of the transfer of some of this IP into the American market, number one? And sort of adjacent to that is the U.S. Doing Me Too? Is it too late, or are we just in such early days that it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of everything we had discussed about branding at the same time. I think it all goes back to the monetization model that could be enhanced over time, right? So, as we all know, microdrama came from China as a new medium, and there's about a 3 to 5 year time lag out here in the US market. And if you want to see where this industry is going, it's easy to just forecast from what is happening in China at the moment. So we can tell 3 to 5 years down the road what we could achieve. And branded content collaboration has been happening since 2021 out there. As soon as microdrama became a main consuming medium for the audience. What I see the benefit of that is kind of like expanding your audience base when you get to the point of wanting to like open new territories for your demographics or brand if you ever reach to that point as a platform or independent producer, but or playing along with the same branding direction to further enhance, like say Real Short Midland feels very consistent on the same group of people they're targeting. So then the benefit is also bringing in different sides of investment coming from the commercial and branding side of the business outside of traditional film and TV to kind of elevate the value of this medium altogether. And where we have observed not only from commercial, but also getting more tech sector or even educational sector of people who care about this newly formed aspect ratio of storytelling to commission and sponsor more materials and distribute it to the existing platforms could be a way to play that as well. And then talking about introducing IP from international space, we all know microdrama started off localizing and translating from hit shows or hit materials from China. That is the very first step, the first, method to go from 1 to 10. We have to achieve, to have the volume first in a new platform and then talk about quality. So quantity first and then quality. And we're at this tipping point here in the States. The volume has already been established for the top performers like GoodShort, Real Short Drama Box out there. And the newly founded domestic platforms are still playing the volumes game as we observed. So we just have to really see where the cusp is at for them to experiment into quality or novelty side of the business. And that's where we can get different genres in or different types of creatives into the space at the
Which
same
is
time.
very exciting. But just to stay with you for a second, Netflix and YouTube are as they begin adding things like shorts or short drama tabs. How does a real short or a drama box survive this sort of convergence crisis where giant platforms might eat their niche, or do they? So, what do you think?
I, first of all, I feel like Carina might have interesting to say around this, but my read on that is they do not serve as the same function at all. Netflix did not need to acquire more user from people who are already subscribing to it on the phone. And then the microdrama space of apps, they started off acquiring user first. That was their first step. And they reversely built where the content strategy is going for them to enrich and enhance the material on the app itself. So I do not think they're conflicting, but it is a really good sign that these bigger streamers are looking into the format. It means like, okay, everyone one day will be consuming it on the mobile in the same way that Thom has been dealing with for years already.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think looking at like a YouTube or a TikTok introducing ability for UGC microdramas just opens up the market in the same way that the publishing industry is making and selling billions of dollars of novels every year. But there's online fiction, there's self-publishing that are also thriving. I don't think UGC microdramas are going to replace the big apps. The game that the big players in the space right now are playing is that they all came from China. Nobody here knew how to do this stuff, so they had to function as studios here. So they're pipelining content from China, localizing here, and so they have this chicken and egg game of when do they start to evolve their content strategy to start making other things. And they're stuck in the game of there's one thing that works really, really well in the way that they advertise. And if they try to do fantasy or they try to do something else, it doesn't work in the same marketing it doesn't deliver the same results in marketing. And so they keep making soap operas over and over and over again because it's doing quite well. And so that leaves a big space open for independents and local platforms that are launching who already have a much better understanding of the content landscape, who have a much better understanding of the audience behaviors and trends. And you're seeing that, not to toot Gamma Times horn too much because they don't pay me, but they're getting better retention metrics than any of the platforms who've been doing this for 3 years now. And they have a fraction, their entire pre-seed funding was $14 million, which is less than GoodShort spends in 2 weeks on marketing. So, it's coming, locals are coming, and you'll see the big players evolve as well as locals start to push the envelope in other ways. And the other thing to keep aware of, like Grace said, China's 3 to 5 years ahead in this space. They've already pivoted away from customer acquisition as a business model. They're ad supported and subscription supported. Every one of the platforms here has those tools and has been playing with them constantly, and they're ready to pivot when they need to. It's just a matter of whether they can get the same level of growth by doing that. And they don't. So they'll keep playing the customer acquisition game until they have to pivot. But it's coming in one form or another.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And
Oh, I was
just
just
to add to that, the dominating app in China on microdrama is in free ad model. They're made by ByteDance, and that really plays back into the need for brands and commercial, luxury goods coming into this space too, so that we can really leverage the revenue into creators and the content itself over time. Less of a kind of crash coin
Yeah,
based.
I see that ecosystem, perhaps exploding here. Carina, let's hear GoodShort's take on all of this.
Yeah, I think Brandan is right that the major platforms, we are still a little bit in the acquiring subscribers phase. And the way I see the new platforms operating is, like Grace said, they're trying more of the quality first, and then the quantity, and maybe they are getting more of like the retention. Um, but to be honest, the model, which you're right, we have been using it for 3 years, but to this point, it is still working for us. I can't speak for like GoodShort Drama Box, but I can say that for GoodShort, our balances are a little bit more reasonable
I think you
than
guys you guys have
yeah.
much better fixed costs than those two do.
Yes, we pride ourselves on having the best return on investment for the big
Yeah.
apps. And so, there is some variety within the space, but it is true that, we honestly probably, I mean, I don't know the exact figures, but we probably make more money on the new users who download the app and subscribe for one show and watch maybe 20 episodes than, having a smaller subset of people watch an entire show all the way through. Of course, that is always the goal, to get people to watch the entire show. We make an effort through the whole thing. but we know that the where we make our money is the first 10 episodes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's good. Tom, what do you see in this?
Yeah, I was just going to make the point that you kind of lumped Netflix and YouTube in together, and I just want to call out that I think those are not only two different business models, but they're look, it's like it's as I've said before, it's like early days of television. If we looked at what TV
Mhm.
was in the 1950s, we would see soap operas and comedy that to us today looks really cheesy and like talking heads on the news. And lo and behold, what do we see on our phones right now? We see soap operas in the on the microdrama apps, and on TikTok we see mainly talking heads and and stuff for kids. But over time these things grow, and it is only with the exploration of different business models and frankly risk taking and so forth that allows these things to grow. I think the thing with the Netflix and Disney coming in is that they start with I know it's hip to call these companies like big old dinosaurs, but they start with, first of all, like, mountains and mountains of cash. Well, some more than others, but mountains of cash to spend on this stuff. But much more importantly, especially in the case of Disney, IP and franchises that go back literally generations that they can draw on that people will show up for, and brand trust that's been built over the years. Like that's one of the issues with now we're starting to see, okay, we have got GoodShort, we've got Drama Box, we've got Real Short, and a couple of and Flare Flow, and a couple of others that are you know, rising to the top. And then there's like 200 other apps out there, all with names like that, like, Short Reel and Long Short and, Box. I don't know. And they are all going to fall apart, or most of them are going to fall apart because there's no brand differentiation, right? And there's no brand
Mhm.
loyalty for
Yep.
the lion's share of these apps. And, if you want to ask the question of what's going to be the thing that causes audience to stick around, it's giving them giving them something, letting them know that there is a difference between your brand long. I just don't buy the argument that the average consumer is really down with, oh, I watched this ad, I'm going to download this app, and the next time I want to watch a different show, I'm just going to go and download this other app and do that. I mean, to me, that's a really, really short-term business model that probably only appeals to a relatively small segment of not only the whole American audience, it probably appeals to a very small segment of the soap opera watching audience. I think it's a
Hmm.
limiting factor just as much as it is a growth factor. And it's true what you said, Grace. I think you said this, that Netflix doesn't need the sort of or it's a different business model on the Coinbase thing. No, but if Netflix understands that, hey, this is where people are, they're just going to redesign their app to be vertical first. It's not going to affect their television app necessarily, but they're just gonna roll with it. And YouTube, I mean, that YouTube is the primary place where people watch microdramas,
Right.
not any
That's
individual
right.
app. And most apps aren't even taking advantage of it. Like the number of apps who don't even have a channel for themselves on YouTube and are content to let people, pirate their shows and make money off of
Mhm.
them is kind of staggering. But that's, the blinders are on with some of these apps, and it's like that's not our problem right now.
No, no, it's not. But I mean, since you mentioned YouTube, I mean, of course, we look a lot at the creator economy and where that's going. I mean, don't you think this is natural, though, just for creator networks or any number of people we know who are in different sides of that to jump in? What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, this is a big conversation I had over the weekend in London, where the people who are best positioned to take advantage of this going forward are people who already have a command of the creator economy, to use buzzwords. People who already have success with YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, even Snapchat, places like that. When the price point gets low enough for them, or they feel like starting a new channel or business model, they're going to be able to distribute their content through those types of platforms, with an audience already, with understandings of how to bring audience into those places in ways that independent producers, people who've worked in Hollywood for 20 years, who might be able to make the content really well, will have no real command. And content creators that move into the microdrama space have a huge opportunity, especially if they've got a built-in audience and they start teaming up with brands. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
I see that immediately, and I think that bodes well for where things are going in the U.S. I'd be remiss if I did not at least mention Microco, which was a big announcement last summer. Still kind of waiting to see exactly what they're doing, but not a small investment and some pretty big names, Hollywood names behind that. So I do think, I mean, as we have all said, in sort of looking at different aspects of the vertical drama business, that there will be others coming in. Carina, as you've said, some seem to be trying to slip through the back door, the side door, or through the skylight and get something for free. That four-letter word that creators like us really hate. On one level, on the other hand, I do think that it's a question of user behavior. Two things I always talk about in terms of the maturation or the evolution of technology is incremental innovation at scale, how we literally look at things over a period of time. And then the other is user behavior. And I think we certainly have enough data, and certainly, Grace, you certainly do from Asia, that vertical works, but maybe more so in certain markets than others, for the same reason that telenovelas are more of a thing in the Latin market than they are in the Anglo market. I think that this is... And there are weird, genres. I mean, there's the Korean use of Subway. John Oliver did a very funny segment on that. Sort of embedded branded content. Who knows, who's going to be the next hit? I do have a question, which is very Hollywood centric to some degree. Where are the agencies in this? Where is UTA and CAA and others? And Brandan is looking very sad and saying nowhere. So
like a lot of people coming from Hollywood in the last 6 months or so, you're starting to see a lot more conversations happening. And that includes the agencies, UTA, CAA, places like that. I've had UTA set up several meetings with, established production companies, people with 20, 30 years of hit shows on TV, hit films and stuff like that are interested in this space. That's not to say that everybody's going to get into it, but some people will get into it. Some people should be in it right now, and frankly, that their content is already highly aligned with the market, and they could make a lot of money. I won't name names right now, but the biggest gap there is the decades of experience in Hollywood don't necessarily transfer directly to this space. There's a very steep learning curve, which when you look at the stuff, you wouldn't think there is. There's a very steep learning curve coming into the space. And quite frankly, most people, because the Chinese companies had to bring it over here and make it themselves, meaning a lot of locals are not working their way into this space at the scale the space is operating at. There's a lot more people who, when they come into the space, are bringing baggage with them from how they make film, how they make TV, how stories should be told, how audiences like things. And then what they end up doing is creating shows for nobody, because it's not for a film and TV audience, and it's not for the microdrama audience, and somewhere in the middle. And that's a learning curve that's very steep. And a lot of people are going to have to go through it if they move from one space to the other.
Creating shows for nobody. Maybe that was a course at USC that you took, Carina, or Grace. I don't know. But I think that's something that everyone should avoid strenuously. So thank you for bringing that up, Brandan, because I really think that it goes back to, again, the user behavior. Not to say that people can't adapt, but I think that the viability in terms of where this IP goes, yes, it might go from the vertical mobile device to a big screen, but you have to have an audience for that. And I think that what's interesting to me is also where audience development comes in, and how this can really appeal to very specific genres and even demographics. I mean, Thom, you mentioned Rizzle and the Indian market. I mean, I think that we will probably see more people trying to kind of push things in that direction to not be left behind. Don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think that, well, I guess which direction do you mean? India or do you mean
No,
just
no, globally. Yeah.
globally? Yeah, well,
We
look, I
could
think
we could talk about India because I mean the most
huge,
populous
huge
country on the planet. Yeah,
second
yeah.
most, I believe, but yeah, like huge and yeah, and overlooked a lot when we talk about content. But yeah, I mean, if you mean in terms of a localization sense, I mean, yeah, I think that every like at the scale at which we're producing, there's no reason why. Like every country, every region of the United States could have its own, sort of content stream. We don't need this centralized thing anymore. And that would anchor its audience. And to your point about agencies and when they get involved, Chris, I would say like why do we need them? Like honestly, like that part of the joy of working in this has so
Well,
far been
I was waiting for you to say that. So
yeah, like what
screw them gatekeepers.
no, but yeah, no, for sure. But like, what is that all about? Like that to me, that speaks of a model where you got to call this guy and he's got to call this one and this got to call this one and set up the deal, over a couple cigars. And it's like, well, actually, like the data is setting up 90% of the deal right now, and the fan base is setting up the rest. And so it's pretty clear on a month-to-month basis. Here's the actors we should try to hire, for the next couple of productions. Here's the directors that keep working. Here's the writers that have hits. Like that doesn't mean that you can't try new things, but I just don't see what an agency packaging thing is going to do other than blow up the budget to a point where
Yeah.
no one can afford to make the thing.
Yeah. So before we wrap, we do have one question from Samira Qureshi. It's a three-part question, but I'm going to kind of cut this a little bit. He's asking if you're getting approached by brands directly, talent creator agencies, or their media agencies, and what kind of budget they're allocating, and are they expecting massive returns via waterfall accounting, et cetera, et cetera. Carina, I'm guessing that you're being bombarded, right?
A little bit, yeah. But honestly, if anyone is listening to this and wants to have a further conversation with me about it, you're welcome to message me on LinkedIn. But yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, but yes, a lot of the brands are reaching out to me directly or some of my colleagues, either LinkedIn or directly, a friend of a friend works at Sony or whatever, and
Hmm.
they want to set a meeting with us. And in terms of the budget, also depends, but most of them are, seeming like the money they're coming in with is, hey, we're going to cover the production budget for, 3 to 5 to 10 projects.
Right.
And then, we haven't set any deals yet. But, so far the negotiation process is ongoing. And I do think that most of the brands that are coming to us are very open to learning from our side about what works best for us. And so, I think when we do make deals, it's going to be a pretty wide range in terms of like the
Hmm.
profit on the other side and
Got it.
what the deals look like.
And maybe a slate deal. And I'm going to throw
Yeah.
there's a second question, which will be the last one, from Mr. Anonymous, who's always around anonymous. To you, Brandon, I'm going to throw this one to you. The vertical platforms seem to be making money, but how do the actual producers and content makers of original vertical dramas make money?
Yeah, so the platforms make money is questionable, but yes, they are making revenues, but they're not making the net revenues that I think a lot of people think they are. In terms of producers, I've actually talked to quite a few people out of launching their own platforms in the last year and a half. Once they understand the business model a little bit better, they realize why that's not the greatest idea. The margins for producers are quite low in this space. So if you're not going to be able to do it at scale, which there are a few people who are doing this at scale, they're making three, four, five of these things a month for various platforms. That's a viable business model. It's also a very difficult, stressful business model. Um, the more attractive way to do this is to come in with a little bit of financing and say I've got 5 shows or I've got 10 shows and be co-producers, be partners.
Hmm.
And then the back end revenue shares become a little bit more real. In that case, it depends on the platform you're working for. Sometimes they never become real. But there are if you're coming in and being a partner with the platform, you're more vested in the success of the show with them. There is a viable
Yeah.
business there that otherwise, if you're just a one-off independent producer, you might do a show, and then your next show, the platform decides they don't want to green light it, and all of a sudden your next month's income is gone. And
Yeah.
so it's the margins are very low for producing.
Interesting. Well, we'll see how that changes. So, my sort of wrap up here is that the winners this year won't just be the ones with the most viral hooks. Success will go to those who can solve loyalty problems, moving away from high friction pay per episode models toward integrated ecosystems where community and commerce and content live on the same vertical screen. So whether you call it a microdrama or TikTok TV or whatever, one thing is certain: the way we tell stories has been permanently rotated 90 degrees. Yes. I want to thank my amazing panelists. Grace Gao from Celestine Pictures, please vertically clap. Vertically. No. Brandan Dennehy from Stratagem Vertical. Carina Williamson from GoodShort, and Thom Woodley, who's all over the place with Hudson Vertical and many other places. I'm Chris Pfaff from Chris Pfaff Tech Media LLC. Thank you for coming. Remember that this is recorded, so if your friend didn't catch it live like you can go to the Streaming Media YouTube channel and check it out. And as always, want to thank the team at Streaming Media, led by Steve Nathans Kelly. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, panelists. This was fantastic. This was, I feel a little smarter now, to be honest, after hearing all that. But and I also want to thank our executive producer, Bill Spence. Bill, turn on your camera. Show it to your. Bill is always bringing the shirt A game to
That's
Streaming
right.
Media Connect,
Amen.
even when he's not on camera.
Never been to Hawaii, but I've got my wardrobe from there.
And I do want to congratulate Rami Loaiza, who was the first of many people to correctly identify Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson with "The Revolution will not be televised," and it is true, it is not a spectator sport. So we will be back here for 3 days in May for the next Streaming Media Connect. And it's been a great week for us here. Hope it has been for you, and I hope we will see you all again in May.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.